It was 32 years ago that a maintenance garage in Blaine underwent an amazing transformation, and it turned into the Blaine Library that we know today. And I would say that since that time, the Blaine Library has helped this community go through an amazing transformation. Last month, January of this year, the Blaine Library circulated 17,500 items. And that's just the physical books. That's not counting the e-books and the computer usage and the coming to the library for programs and all that other stuff. That's just the books. That's the most, circulation at the Blaine Library is the most that it's ever been in the history of the Blaine Library. So we have some reasons to celebrate. And we have some real needs to fulfill as well. You've been hearing all along. Actually, the words have been coming from you. We need more space. We're going to see, we asked everybody to kind of provide 3 words that they envision the Blaine Library being, and we'll see what some of those words were. So it was in June of 2019 that the Library Design Committee was formed, and that committee consisted of members of the Whatcom County Library System staff. It consisted of friends of the library. I see Cindy Leffel out there and Carol Solomon. Also, we had members of the city, Sam Crawford, Stacy Pratchner, Pat Freeman were also on the Library Design Committee, and community member Pam Christensen. Together, we selected the architecture team of Johnston Architects and King Architecture. And since November, they've been visiting us once a month and taking us through a process pretty quickly. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm really pleased with the results that we're going to be seeing tonight for the reveal. We started in November with an infinite number of ideas. What is it that strikes you? What images or words is it that you would like to see in your library? In December, they came back to us and brought that down to 3 different rough design concepts, and we had a great conversation and provided a lot of feedback. In January, they were back with 2. They put all those good ideas and brought it down to 2 different design concepts, and today they're back with 1. And I hope that we brought forward in this process everything that you wanted to see in this library. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jack. Are you going to start, or Ray, are you going to start us off?
Some words and then I'll jump in.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. So this has been a lot of fun getting to know you and getting to know this library and explore these concepts and ideas and the things that you need and want inside the library. And I think we've managed to bring all of them together, and hopefully you'll see, a reflection of yourselves and of the community and some of the industries and the activities that make Blaine what it is in our design tonight.
Most of you have been here before, and so you know sort of the deal with how we go through the presentation, but I always like to mention the survey because we have many more results than we had last time we were here, almost 100 more than last time we were here. I will say that it hasn't changed dramatically what the sort of summary takeaway is from the survey, but I will say that we did have a good increase in the number of folks responding with young children in the household, so that was good. I think there was probably some good marketing that went around and people got the word out, so that's excellent. Thank you. Can we go to the next one? And I'll also say, I think I'm getting feedback. I'll move over here. That the survey is still open and will remain open for a little while longer. So make your voices heard. I won't go through too many of the sort of, you probably know this, most of the folks live in Blaine and have a library card, have been to the Blaine Library. As Michael was saying, the top wants are more space, larger collection, more space, and you'll see in our words after this that comes through kind of loud and clear. The sort of secondary nature of the library is a community gathering space and a community center-ish for Blaine, kind of like this. And then one of the things I wasn't able to put in here because we didn't have enough room, was that children's books has leapt into 4th. So that's good to see. And we know that they're very important, and it's starting to show up in the survey results. Obviously, educational programs and classes were the top programs. And then 55% of the respondents had no children in their household. That's down from, I think it was 68 in the beginning. So that's pretty good. All right, next one. All right, here are our words. And this one's even more ridiculous than when we put it up in the past community meetings. But as you can see, larger, bigger, spacious space. And I didn't make this up. This was just generated out of the words that were in the survey by a word cloud generator. And so obviously that's a top priority. All right, next slide. Project realities. This was the last community meeting, so we're going to go over some of the summary ideas and information that we got from that meeting. Next. All right, so last time, as Michael said, we had 2 ideas. We flipped the boat. For those of you who don't know, we had something that looked like a boat, and we flipped it. And then we had the beacon. And so I could go through all of these, but you can read. I think the biggest takeaway is that people really like the plan of the beacon, but they really like the presence of the boat or the feeling of the boat. So we went away and tried to combine those 2 things into one. And so what you'll see is that the plan still resembles the beacon quite a bit, but we tried to put a little bit of the language of the boat into the exterior of the building and into the public spaces of the interior. And then one of the big takeaways was move the teens away from the adult lounge. So we put the teens in the corner, I think where everybody thought was best. And that's about it. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this is brief. Tim is going to talk to us about some of the sustainability efforts we've been through and the building assessment, the existing building assessment for those folks who haven't heard about that.
I'll start with the existing building condition assessment. So we did a study on the existing building. That was part of our scope, was to determine whether there was anything left in the existing building that we could reuse. And quickly there was a common denominator, and that is much of the existing building is in poor condition and have either reached or are beyond their expected useful life. So that is the building summary in general that we found, mechanical systems to plumbing fixtures, etc. So our assessment, and also the existing structure, predates modern engineering, to say it bluntly. And so to go in and make an assessment of the existing steel structure would just be very disruptive to existing operations. We would have to do a lot of demolition work to uncover the existing building frame to make an actual assessment. So in our opinion, it was going to actually cost more to try and salvage the existing building rather than to build new. So that was pretty much the summary that we came, or the conclusion that we came to on the existing building. So part of our initial work is to do a eco-charrette, and that looks at all of the sustainability aspects of this project. And we go through a series of the different groupings there. We look at site placement, the location and transportation, sustainable sites. The first one there, we're in a little bit of a predicament. We don't really we're on the end of line of a WTA bus route, so the service is a bit limited, so we're not getting full points for that. But certainly we can provide some bicycle facilities and green vehicles. I think the library system has a few cars that are electric cars. Sustainable sites, we look at rainwater management, rain gardens. So as you'll see in the design, we're collecting all of the rainwater into the center of the building and then draining it into a rain garden. We look at such things as heat island reduction. So that is the parking lot. We try and get planting in the parking lot so that we minimize the effects of the heat sink of the parking lot. Water efficiency, we look at the indoor fixtures. We look at low-flow fixtures, trying to minimize our impacts on water use. We also look at the site watering, so we do plantings that are that don't require as much water in our area. So those are the types of things that we look at there. Energy and atmosphere. So there is, that deals a lot with the actual systems in the building, so mechanical systems. So we do an entire model of the existing, of the building and all of the components within it, and it needs to meet certain requirements. And so largely we look at how much energy this building actually uses in an energy model. Materials and resources, we make sure that we use reusable or sustainable products, recyclable products. Indoor air environmental quality, we look at making sure that we use low emitting products so that the air is healthy to breathe inside. We do testing before people move in, those sorts of things. We make sure that, and you'll see also in the design, we've got a lot of daylighting. So we're hoping to capitalize on a lot of daylighting in this building as well. And I think that's the basic summary.
Thank you for covering.
I had a question. Are you going to be using any passive and active solar energy?
We do anticipate using some solar energy. To what extent hasn't been determined yet, but we do we did anticipate some points for using solar power. And a lot of what we do here now will translate into the cost estimating that we will do in the next phase. We'll do a preliminary round of cost estimating. So we take our goals in this initial phase and then translate that into actual dollars for the project.
We asked that this sustainability scorecard process be done because if we are able to receive some state funds, we plan to apply. And if we receive them, that will require LEED Silver level. And so if we don't receive state funds, we probably won't spend the money on getting that certified. But if we do, and we're hopeful that we will, then we need to be ready to move forward with LEED Silver. And so that's really the main reason for the sustainability study. Also, we're all interested in building efficiencies and sustainability. So thank you for that work, Tim.
Yeah, thanks, Michael.
So maybe I'll carry on into the program. We've gone through a fairly exhaustive process with talking with you and the district about what should be in this building. And this chart just shows the areas of program and how they vary from the existing. It's, pretty close to twice the size of the existing building. And I think there are some aspects of the existing building that, really don't exist and will be present, like the meeting rooms and things like that in this building. This is all based on not only kind of right-sizing spaces for the kinds of uses you all wanted, but also looking at program components, numbers of materials, how much space each component takes for its quantity of materials, and arriving at a size for that program area. Yes?
What are quick reads?
Quick reads are those things that you might want. Hot picks, same things, okay, yeah.
It's been on this old spreadsheet, incorrectly, sorry. That's my fault.
It's Jack's fault, so.
It's been on here the whole time, every single meeting, I keep forgetting to fix it.
Reeds, they're grasses that grow really fast.
We do have some of those actually in the project.
All right, next slide. Yeah. So here's the general program layout, and just to orient you, and then we might move to the 3D I think we have the 3D in this. So this is north, and you see the receiving over there, and this is the west side along 3rd, and entries in the northwest corner. Along the alley, there are things you'll see a little bit of that we're still developing. Children's area looks into this alley, but we have a thought that it can look into green space, and there's still a discussion with the district as to how that's managed and whether it's a garden for the children or something more. Yes.
Is this located in the present location?
It is. The existing library is right about here. Yeah.
So is it going to be operational while that's being built, or?
No, and we haven't really talked about temporary services.
We've been looking into the cost of space around town, and so we are prepared to ensure that you can continue to use library materials, and we'll have various programs happening throughout the county as well, but we want you to have as many library services throughout the construction project as possible, and we're beginning plans to make sure that would happen.
What's the time frame?
Well, we need to get the money first.
So once it's knocked down, how long is it gonna take to come up?
Well, it should, including move-in time, most libraries of this size take about 18 months. So 12, 13 months to build and several months, well, there's a little bit of time up front and couple months to occupy it, to put the furnishings in and bring the materials in and things like that. Sometimes it's a little quicker, we'll see. This is a pretty easy access site, so it might be.
Is the amount of parking going to change?
The parking is basically the parking that's in the surrounding area, and I think it stays more or less the same in the surrounding area, but that will also depend on other developments that are happening on city properties.
You're not seeing the entire parking plan here. To the north of this site, where the G Street is,
Yeah.
could be a lot more parking. So
Yeah.
there's more parking than you're seeing in this image.
Yeah, right now I think you have just, I don't know, a dozen spaces out in front, and I think we'll equal that in the surrounding area. So, let's see, is the next slide the 3D? Yeah, so this might be a easier way for you to understand. I'll walk you through it. So here's that entry area, and then this is the entry vestibule, and it's kind of a somewhat grand entry vestibule because it houses the Friends sale, and it also is a place to meet in advance of events that might happen here. It's also a place that there might be temporary or even permanent art collections shown, things that the community produces. This will be a real nice gallery-like space. A lot of daylighting you'll see later. The restrooms are off of that. The meeting room here it has a catering counter along the back of it and some storage for the various tables and chairs, just like these we have here, that would go into the meeting room for different configurations. That meeting room really is kind of a lantern along the southwest corner. So when you look down 3rd Street, you'll see this thing that looks like you should be allowed to go in it, and it looks like a public building, and so it'll draw people that way. Same thing along G Street with this corner. Once you enter, there's the hot picks, the holds, and then the 2 service points. Across from the 2 service points are a set of computers. That's still a little bit in flux as far as what types of computers, where, and how many. And then some lounge seating, some little cafe seating. So this is meant to be kind of a fairly active area, kind of like a coffee shop might be. And then the children's area beyond, running to the south. If you went deeper in past the service points, the media, magazines, some more cafe-like seating, a small conference room, a lounge area with a fireplace, which will be either photographic or something else, we don't know. I think there were votes for both propane and electronic fireplaces, but this is like the living room right in the heart here. And then these are the primary collections, the fiction and nonfiction, biography, things like that. Here's that teen area, and I think the teens will not feel like they've been dissed by being put in the corner. They'll probably like it because it's They have their own territory. They're somewhat observable, but won't feel like they're always being observed. And then they have a lot of the natural environment and the landscaping that we would intend outside of it. They're next to a nice-sized conference room. That conference room and the children's area both look out on a nice garden. This is the back of the house, so there's book drop, which would be accessible from the vestibule or from just outside. And then there are some mechanical spaces, mechanical, electrical, an office for the head librarian who can look through these sliding doors. This could be, left open. It's a 4-panel slider, so you could have about an 8-foot opening during open hours. So there's a fairly easy flow between the workroom here and the office and the service points here. And then staff lounge and restroom, and an area for the in-loading and offloading of books that's tuned up for the kinds of totes that are used by the district. Any questions about the layout? Yes, sir.
Well, the service point seems to be, a little bit restricted, because some people are not always, need a little bit of help to do the self-checkup and check out and a few things like this. So you're trying to get away, I understand, from the traditional desk or what have you, but those things, two things look a little bit awkward.
They do. They're a little minimalist, and I think in reality we would imagine typically each service point would be maybe 6 or 7 feet wide, either have an adjustable desk or have 2 levels for seated or standing service, and a computer on them. So these are somewhat a function of the software and the furniture we have in there that we can plug into those service points. But I think we envisioned something a little more robust. So it's a good point. Yeah, a little bigger. Was there another comment? Yes, ma'am. We do not have a drive-through drop-off in this version. So. It's about 40%. I don't have an exact number in my head, but I think it's somewhere in the 40% more. So I think it's a little more than that. Yeah, it is. But it's a significant increase in the collection size.
Another question is, you have that computer right there in front where everybody sits, and they know where it is now, but is that a good location for one of those?
That's something that's,
Yeah.
So probably, it's a hard question. I think the librarians in the room would say, we frequently get asked for help on the computers. So there's that factor that with the service point and even visual from inside the workroom out there, if people need help, librarians can see and can go and help out. On the other hand, there are some folks in the community that really don't want to see computers as the first thing they see when they enter a library. So, and then on top of all that, the way computers are being used in libraries is continuing to change pretty rapidly. And if it takes us maybe a year to get ready for construction, it might change further between now and then. So I think of all the things that could be, that you could find change between now and the final solution, that might be one. And I think the options could be that these flip. Another one is there's a collection along this sidewall that could be traded for computers. So there's several solutions that would satisfy the librarian's concerns plus what you mentioned. Yes, ma'am.
Is it possible if they put a screen in front of that, pushed it this way a little bit, and then had a little help button or something that they could if they needed help?
Well,
A light.
yeah.
You might not come for 5 minutes, but at least you
Yeah.
know somebody's coming.
Well, that would be something I think the district could consider. Yes, ma'am.
The
Sir.
computer hookups, even if they're not used, is it going to be designed so that they'll be there?
Yes, one thing that this library will have that, even 5-year-old libraries don't very often, is a lot of ways to connect. So there will be wired hookups and wireless hookups and lots of places to plug in your devices and you know, to get power and get information. So, all right. So, Jack, do you want to talk about the next slides here?
If you want me to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty dramatic. I just want you guys to hold on to your seats.
Okay, so we're taking you through the exterior of the building now, and we'll end a little bit with the interior, but one thing I forgot to mention in the beginning is that we do have a VR setup tonight, so if you are interested in visiting the library virtually, you can certainly do that tonight. And I'm a good guide, and if you get sick, you're not the first person to get sick doing a VR, but you can also just watch it on the screen too, if that's more your speed. But we can take a really detailed tour of the interior of the library that way after we sort of get through the presentation portion. And there's some images in the back when we are finished here. So this is across 3rd on G, as if you were coming off the corner of G headed towards the library. One of the things that we'd heard from the very outset was that it would be really great if the library was a sort of a center of town, visible from multiple areas, and especially down G Street and from H Street, so like from where people are, that you could have the library have some presence. And I think that that's one of the things that people really liked about the boat concept, was it had this big beacon thing drawing you to this building. Unfortunately, the rest of the plan just wasn't quite as good as the beacon was. And so what we decided to do with the beacon was to take some of those ideas and elevate the design of the beacon to sort of recreate what we were seeing with the boat. And one of the main concepts here with the beacon is that each corner of the building is a public space, an entry, a meeting area, the teen area, the staff lounge. They're different types, but they're all public spaces that can be lit up at night. And so the big one is the entry here. And one of the aspects that we really liked about the boat, and when we were starting to put this one together, was how it harkened back to maritime architecture and how that really resonated with the area in which the building is being built. And so we like to expose the structure of the ceiling and of the roof and have it almost float over top of the building so that we can use it as the light source for the lanterns. We also really like the way that turned out, so we decided to take that warm wood down the vertical surface here so that it also was lit up at night, and so that you got this warm glow that wasn't harsh, but was inviting and was also bright and acted like a beacon. All right, let's hit the next one. Okay, so here's a close-up. This is me standing in the landscaping, but it's a great shot, so I had to take it. We'll have Kodak moment right here. But it also helps to illustrate just how welcoming and how inviting that entry will be. And having it off of G Street, I think, is really going to help this entry be very successful and lead people into the gallery that Ray was talking about, where the Friends sale is, where a significant, art collection or rotating art could be, local art could be displayed. And really have a nice interaction with the street. One of the things that we tried to do between last time and this time is really look into the landscaping of the site and how the building meets the site and the site kind of embraces the building. So we've added this sort of causeway here underneath the large overhang, so it's relatively protected, where we expose some of the structure and have those rocks do look kind of foreboding, but they're supposed to be sittable and will be in the final design, so there will be bench-like rocks that you can sit on out there. And then the entry off of G Street with the big Blaine Library sign and the book drop is that black square there, and some bike racks off to the right. You can see the guy on the bike riding up to them. All right, next one. Okay, so this is looking across the street, from across the street, kind of as the sun is going down. You can see sort of the sunset in the windows, very dramatic. But this gives us a good overall idea of the facade of the building on 3rd Street, and you can really see sort of the bookend of the two beacons and the floating roof above, and how inviting that is at night. Next. And then this is coming up Third, as if you were coming from H, coming up Third past the police stations on your right, intentionally out of view. And you'll see some things that we're doing, some strategic things that we're doing with the site to help prevent the police station being right in the lap of the library. One of the things we've done, and you can see it here, is provide a buffer. So we pushed the building as far as we could north to essentially the property line on the north, to provide distance between the police station and that facade so that we didn't have to feel like we were right up against the police station, because there isn't much of a back to this building, and we wanted to make sure that all sides were sort of equal. And again, you can see, even though the conference room is not being used, it's still welcoming. You can still see through to the children's area, and it still looks like the lights are on, come on in.
What is this, the dark siding, what is that made of?
That is up in the air, but right now, as it is rendered, it is a dark cedar. And one of the reasons for that is because of the sort of the maritime aspect of the architecture, and also because with the structure and the lightness of the glazing, we felt like cedar was a nice, light, kind of taut skin to combine with that. We are also looking at brick, because we know that brick is very popular in Blaine, is a historic material here. Personally, I think it looked a little massive and out of place in the architecture, but we will definitely provide pricing information for probably at least 2 materials on those facades, so that we're well educated as to what that cost might be when we move forward with this in design.
I have a question.
Yes.
The cars that are parked there,
Mhm.
with the parking lot lines there, is that on library property?
No, that's in the right of way. Yeah, it's in the right of way. The property line is right here.
Okay, so that's like it's sitting kind of the sidewalk, and
Mhm.
those cars are parked in the angled parking that's already existing on the curb.
Essentially, yeah. It kind of continues that parking. Yes.
Has any thought been put into the replacing of the ballot depository for elections that people have been driving through the library parking lot and handing in their...
Not in our scope, but I don't know. Is there anyone here who can speak to that? No. We'll find a spot. Yes, we will. This whole area, and I think the folks from the city here can speak more intelligently to it than I can, but the whole block here is sort of under a redevelopment, and the future of this block, it'll look a lot different, I believe, than what it looks like today. One of the things that we do know is this is the library site, the police station is staying there, but everything else is fairly fair game.
In one of the earlier meetings, there was some discussion of the library being sited on what would be the dead end of Main Street,
Yes.
which would be further north.
We decided not to push our luck with that. We can explore that later, but as part of, one of the issues is the property to the north is privately held and has to maintain access. So there is an issue with providing parking, dead-ending a street, providing access to that northern property, that it was a little bit too much for us to take, a bite out of at this point in
I
time.
was thinking of the city.
Yeah.
I got a question.
Yeah.
I'm from Florida, so I've seen roofs like that, and a hurricane can take them off. I figure you more likely have got that strong enough to take 70-mile-an-hour winds. which
Yes.
can happen up
It will certainly be designed to withstand not only the winds, but probably more importantly around here, seismic. And definitely the rain, without a doubt. We are Pacific Northwest, tried and true. We will keep the rain out of your buildings. But yes, so some of the trick to this is how do you make the structure seem light, but still give you enough strength to withstand uplift and the horizontal forces of an earthquake. So some of the ways we're starting to think about doing that is by having multiple smaller columns, having columns that engage walls. We have 2 rather significant walls in the project that will act as really significant shear walls, and we'll walk through those when we get to the interior of the building. Okay, so now here are some daylight shots. They wanted us to start out with the dusk shots because they're super dramatic, but it still does look pretty good in the daytime as well. This is a really bright summer afternoon, but I still think it holds up. And it even maybe more looks like it belongs in a maritime environment. Some of the same things, you can start to see the cedar siding and the warm siding on the interior that will continue in, and we'll see that when we go to the interior. There's not much more to say about this than what I said about the original version, but let's... Oh, there's the flagpole, which is very nice maritime flagpole, and looks pretty good. And that's a bird, it's a pigeon actually, but I couldn't find a seagull, so. So this is Third here. Yeah, so these cars are parked along Third. That's the police station with the fence. All right, next. Okay, here's that shot with me and the landscaping again, looking back at the entry. Folks are really happy that the sun's out. No jackets, as you can see. Still looking pretty good. Next. All right, so maybe it's getting closer to sunset, and we haven't turned the lights on in the meeting area yet, or they haven't been triggered yet, but still very handsome. Next. And then this is the facade. It's a little bit easier to see in the daylight, to see some of the proportions, and that's something that Ray and I have been playing around with a lot, is just how the proportions of the building, hold up when you're looking at it from different angles. How big is the overhang? How much clear story do we allow here before it starts to look a little strange? And then the opacity of that wall, and how much do we really puncture that wall in order to, have some presence but still allow people to look in.
Is that roof line the same height all the way across?
It is, and so one of the things that maybe I'll do before we break is pull up the VR model and get up in the air so that folks can get an idea of just how it looks from a bird's eye view, because I don't have a still image of that.
Can you just put your finger along where the third-story windows are? It's hard to tell what's the roof and what's the windows.
Yes, so clear story windows are 2 panes high. So they're about 5 feet total high here. And this is the line of the clear story meeting the roof framing.
So the light is coming in.
It's coming in. And so what's nice about this design in a number of ways is that the overhang kind of protects you a little bit in the summer and lets light in the winter when the sun angle is lower. Especially on the southern side, we've started to pull the roof away from the building a little bit to provide some sun shading. All right, I'm not sure what's next. Let's see. The interior shots. Okay, so you'll have to forgive me. In the VR model, there is art on the walls. So if you want to see some art in the gallery, hang out at the VR station. It was, yes.
My understanding that in the entryway is where the used books are going to be for sale.
That is correct. We have shelving, we have sill height shelving the length of the gallery, which is it's actually quite a bit of linear footage of shelving. But what we...
So the art would go on the other walls, windows.
Yes, exactly. It would go on the windows, and I'll pull it up here so that folks can see it. So let's see, walking through here, it's kind of like walking into the library. This is the entry so the vestibule is behind us. We're coming in from the north looking south. This is that warm wood wall and the clear story letting some light in. This is near dusk. The light's pretty high. The conference room is at the end of the hall, restrooms off to the left, the book collection, and just imagine art on that wall. And the library entry is right here to your left. One thing we didn't mention for those of you who weren't here for the previous meetings, the library is able to be closed off hours, and the conference room is still available to be open to the public. All right. Library entry and hot picks, I got it right here. And those hot picks are modeled off of something Carol sent me. So they're very similar to your hot picks shelving. They're just white and a little bit sleeker. So that's the entry. You will immediately see the service point, the warm wall on your left, and it opens up as you walk down to a very open floor plate. The floor plate is essentially square, which is really good for flexibility and organization and the future use of the library and reorganization of the spaces. And it also provides really good visibility, so if I'm standing at a service point here, you can see the whole floor, which is pretty great. Down here, we have the lounge area, the computers, and the distance children's and teens. Next. And then here, we're actually sort of in the lounge looking back at the electric propane photographic fireplace. Small conference room, warm ceiling. One of the things that I forgot to mention in the words was warmth was in there a lot, and nice interiors, interior finishes. So that was something that came up a lot as well. Here we look at the teens area. Teens area has nice open glazing, overhang to protect it from the southern light. It's kind of secluded, but not. The children's area on the opposite side of the floor plan. This one is a lot of fun and is still left up for, a lot of fun discovery as we go through the design phases. But what I'm showing here, this is either a real or virtual periscope. And we have a little porthole out here where the kids can go and be kind of in the rain garden. We can look at that a little more in the VR. And then this is just a shot of what the medium conference room size is.
Sliding doors to the meeting.
Right. Sliding doors to the meeting room here so that during story hour, they can just go right in to the meeting room.
Floor coverings are going to be
In this version, and it's up for debate, they are carpet and sealed and polished concrete. Carpet in the areas where you want quiet, sealed and polished concrete in the more, the walkways, halls and walkways. One of the things I forgot to mention is we're showing some acoustic treatment on the ceiling above the kids' juveniles' computer area to keep the noise down. It's also a lower ceiling there. And this we've shown in a little bit of a wave pattern to sort of keep with the nautical theme. That's it. Okay, who's ready for virtual reality?